Okay, so we've all heard it a million times, right? America is big. It's kind of cliche. But what does that scale actually mean? In this explainer, we're going to uncover how the sheer size of the United States has pretty much shaped everything, from its trillion-dollar economy all the way down to how we live and move. It's a story that's not just about miles, but about dollars and asphalt.
So, to kick things off, let me ask you a question. What do Austria, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Belgium, Denmark, and, 21 other European nations all have in common? I know it sounds like the setup for a weird joke, but the answer tells us something really fundamental about the United States.
The answer? Get this. You could fit all 26 of those countries inside the state of Alaska. And that is not just some fun fact to pull out at trivia night. No, it's actually the key that unlocks a much bigger idea about scale, perception, and what it really means to be a continental nation. To really get our heads around this, we first have to kind of challenge the maps we all carry around in our minds. Because honestly, most of us just don't have a true sense of the physical size we're dealing with. So let's put a number on it. Alaska covers more than 665,000 square miles. I mean, that's a number so huge, it's almost abstract, right? But understanding this physical reality is the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about. To bring that number back down to earth, let's compare it to Texas, the state that's basically shorthand for huge in our minds. Well, Alaska is more than twice its size. If you've ever driven across Texas, you know that feeling, that it's just endless. Now imagine a chunk of land more than double that. That's the real scale we're talking about.
And this gets to a really key point. It's not just visitors who get the scale wrong. I saw this great line from a Reddit user that just nails it. Even Americans don't realize how big America is. And this blind spot we have about physical size, it often hides an even bigger story about economic scale.
So, let's pivot a little and see how this physical scale translates into economic power. Because as we're about to find out, the two are deeply, deeply connected. So this is the big question, right? What does an economy built on this kind of continental scale actually look like when you break it down into dollars and cents?
Check this out. This data from the World Bank on gross domestic product, the total value of all the stuff a country makes and sells, it tells a pretty powerful story. Yeah, the US is number one, no shocker there, but look at the gap. You could literally combine the economies of Germany, the UK, France, and Italy, and their grand total still wouldn't match the United States.
Yeah, just let that number sink in for a second. $28.75 trillion. That's not just the sign of a powerful economy. That's the signature of a continental one. One that's fueled by massive resources and a huge self-contained market.
But having a massive economy spread out over millions of square miles, that creates a huge logistical problem. How do you tie it all together? How do you move goods, services, and people around efficiently enough to make the whole thing actually work? Well, the answer, in large part, was asphalt. America built this incredible circulatory system of roads that became the very engine of its continental economy. This chart from the Federal Highway Administration shows a really remarkable connection. For decades, economic growth, that's the GDP line, and vehicle miles traveled, which is basically just how much Americans drive, they were practically welded together. As one went up, the other went right up with it. It just goes to show how dependent the economy became on its highway system.
And the network that makes all this happen is just staggering. The United States has 3.9 million miles of roadways. That is enough road to go to the moon and back over 8 times. It's an infrastructure project on a scale that's just hard to comprehend, literally built to tame a continent.
So this chart shows you the result of that massive focus on roads. When it comes to how people get around, it's not even a contest. I mean, just look at that huge slice for private vehicles. Everything else, buses, trains, planes, walking, they're all just tiny little slivers in comparison.
Think about what that really means. Over 91% of all personal trips in the US happen in a car, a truck, or a van. That single number tells you almost everything you need to know about how this massive country functions day to day.
Okay, so let's bring all this home. We've gone from geography to economics to infrastructure. Now let's look at the human side of all this scale.
This is really the so what question, isn't it? What does living in a country built on this scale, all connected by millions of miles of roads, actually feel like for the average person?
Well, it means you spend a lot more time behind the wheel. This data here compares the average distance each person travels by car every year in several developed nations. And as you can pretty clearly see, the US is just in a league of its own.
Let's make that comparison a little more direct,
The average American drives over 5,500 miles per year. Now compare that to the average German in a country with fantastic highways but a very different sense of scale who drives around 3,500. That is a massive difference in daily life.
And this quote from the Federal Highway Administration just gets right to the heart of it. It suggests that this whole idea of an American love affair with cars might actually be more of a marriage of convenience. It's a practical response to the world that's been built, a world born out of the sheer scale of the country itself.
So to quickly recap our whole journey here, we started by seeing how our mental maps can seriously mislead us about America's real size. We saw how that vast geography is the foundation for a massive economy, which is then stitched together by a gigantic highway system. And finally, we saw how all of that funnels down into this unique, very car-dependent way of life.
And that leaves us with a final thought. If a nation's geography really does shape its destiny and its culture, what does it mean that America became, almost by necessity, a nation on wheels? What does that say about our ideas of freedom, independence, and community? It's a question worth thinking about the next time you're on a long drive.